If you're looking to learn guitar, check out Dave Isaac's Guitar Studio on Music Row. Whether you are a beginner or hobbyist, to professional songwriter or artist, Dave offers a unique and powerful method of instruction that teaches not just the instrument, but the whole musician. Find out more at NashvilleGuitarGuru.com.
And welcome back, everybody, to Political Soup. Joe Williams, along with Crom Carmichael and Chip Forrester. And gentlemen, we spent the first segment talking a lot about the new tax code and changes and fiscal cliffs and budgets and all this stuff.
Debt ceilings.
Debt ceilings. Want to run a little bit of a different direction here. In our tease, we talked about Al Gore being a sellout. That was kind of rough, and it was meant to do what it did, but he has. Al Gore has now sold Current TV to Al Jazerra. Al Jazerra. I mean, it's like selling it to a small piece of Al Qaeda. Perception superseding reality. Right. Not saying that's what happened. I do have a question, though, about this, and it reverts back to that discussion that we were having earlier about taxes, et cetera. One of the things that former Vice President Gore said had to happen, this thing had to close December 31st, on or before, simply because there were new tax issues coming up starting January 1. So here's my question for you guys. Does that make Al Gore a very good businessman or a hypocrite?
I think it makes him a good businessman. And I don't want to speak for the vice president in terms of why he made a business decision as a major participant in
perception superseding reality.
Right. But this is a deal between two media companies, and Current TV has been on the cutting edge of integrating social media into the news process. Al Jazerra is a company out of Qatar, I believe it's out of Qatar, that owned by that government that's looking to expand its reach with bureaus all over the world. And I think the vice president, like any good businessman, knew what was coming with taxes and made a decision.
Current TV had 22,000 viewers a night on average. It was generating $100 million because Al Gore would go around to the major moguls of the cable industry and said, you need to carry Current TV, and you need to charge your subscribers $0.10 a month. So that's exactly what they did. And so you had 49 million, some 100,000 who never saw the thing, never watched it, but they had to pay for it because the cable companies charged it so they could give it to Current TV. And what did they get in exchange? They were never criticized in front of Congress about Current TV. Never, because they were carrying it. So it's a pretty nice little clever deal. You have Al Capone, Al Gore, Al Jazerra. You have all three of them all begin with Al. It's the protection racket. Now, as for Al Jazerra, it's not owned by the government. It's owned by the emir. He's the dictator. What's fascinating about this thing is, first of all, Al Gore is a good businessman, and he's also a hypocrite because he's the one who, like all the other Democrats, say people ought to pay more taxes, but he raced to get it closed so that he wouldn't have to pay more taxes. That's number one.
Well, let me just add, to defend him, there are other investors, other participants in that company.
Then we'll see if Al writes a check for the difference. We'll see if he writes a check for the difference. And if he doesn't,
you can't ask. It's like asking Warren Buffett to write a check for more taxes if he wants to pay more taxes. Everybody plays by a set of rules, and when those rules are given to you, you're going to make good business decisions based on those rules. You can want to change them, but those are one of the issues that's always frustrated me about politics is the unlimited amount of money that goes into it. Those are the rules we play by. I don't like it in politics any more than anybody else, but if you're going to be a candidate, you got to raise money and be effective. Those are the rules that Al Gore was playing by. You can't call him a hypocrite for following those like every other.
Well, how about this one?
And I don't know all the details about
the emir has the $500 million because of what? Fossil fuels. They produce fossil fuels. They produce oil. Al Gore says that the fossil fuels are destroying the planet. Al Gore says we're selling to Al Jazerra because we share their values. There's a shared value here. So here you have a guy who's made billions of dollars producing fossil fuels, selling to a guy who says fossil fuels are destroying the planet. I'm sorry, Chip. Al Gore is a pure opportunist. Now, I'm not saying that that's necessarily wrong. I'm simply saying that if he says everybody ought to pay higher taxes and then he races so he can pay lower taxes, if he sells out to somebody selling creating fossil fuels and then condemns fossil fuels, then hops on his own private jet and flies around with the biggest carbon footprint imaginable, I'm sorry, the guy is a phony. Now, He might be a very wealthy phony, but he's still a phony. At the end of the day, all these things that he says are so important, he goes exactly the opposite direction. Bless his heart. Bless his heart.
I'm going to jump in kind of, again, perception potentially superseding the reality of the situation. We can only go by what we see. That's what's perceived.
The other truth on it is that Al Gore and a couple of other people started Current TV. It was a dynamic way to communicate and convey news, and you got to give them credit for that. And to ask anybody to play by a different set of rules just because you think they should is not fair and equitable.
If they think everybody else ought to play by.
No,
here's what's interesting.
I'm sure the vice president would like to see the tax code changed. I'm sure he's talked about that before.
Especially now.
And I mean the tax code changed and it be done in a way where we get rid of these loopholes. But until it is a fair, until we do get it done, he's going to live by the same set of rules that you and I all live by. And I think that's where you're being unfair.
Well, what's fascinating is Channel 5 Plus has more viewers than Al Jazerra.
Oh, I'm not an expert on all that.
Now, is Channel 5 Plus worth $500 million? No. Current TV is worth $500 million because Al Gore convinced all these cable companies to charge their subscribers and to pay for something that they don't watch.
I'm not an expert on the media in that area, so you're just saying something that I can't necessarily refute. But I don't.
Time Warner canceled the contract the next day because in their contract it said that if there's a change of control, they have a right to cancel. So 10 million viewers or households disappeared the next day. And I'm going to bet that
the mayor must be upset about that.
He probably is a little upset.
Well, hey,
it was all cash deal.
In fairness on the charging a dime thing, I mean, that leaves Current TV no different than probably 492 other channels that sit on your cable and dish satellite TV now that you don't watch. You're still paying the dime a month. I mean, in fairness, that's the business model.
Yeah, but I don't think it works out to nearly as much as Current TV was receiving in relationship to the number of viewers.
You're just mad that he made a lot of money, Crom. That's all. That Al Gore, our hometown boy, is doing well for himself. And,
it doesn't trouble me in the least when somebody does well. Yeah. It does trouble me when they do well at the expense of others, and people don't watch his network. Now, he did sell out at a good time, and I hope that and so here's the question, Chip. If he now says we need higher taxes, what do you think about that? What do you think, somebody who's just avoided paying higher taxes, if he calls for higher taxes?
He is, along with the president, along with Bill Clinton and others, called for reforming the tax code. He's talked about that for years. He's talked about it. The fact that the government couldn't get it together is not his responsibility to do it, and he did a straightforward business decision to use the tax code to his business's advantage, which every business does and should do.
Does it trouble you that he sold to essentially a dictator who produces oil?
I don't know all the intricacies of how Al Jazeera is owned, and there's all sorts of stuff going over in the Middle East that's troublesome.
Last comment.
Oh, I'll leave it at that.
He's good. All right, because I get the last one in the third segment. That will wrap up segment 2. Vice President Gore, sorry, you just kind of got caught in the middle on this one. Tell you what, we've got more political soup coming up. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Boy Scouts who got an unexpected defender in the Ninth Circuit Court. We'll tell you about that and more when we come back on Political Soup.
Today's show is brought to you by locally owned and operated Highland Rim Speedway. Highland Rim Speedway is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year with great short-track, door-to-door stock car racing in a safe, family-friendly atmosphere. Visit their website at highlandrim.com.